So I thought I'd hang out in the camper today. It's been a while since I've been in the camper. The last time I was in the camper, I think I was canning some chicken. I don't usually hang out in here. This is kind of Carolyn's extra space. She primarily just cooks in here. Doesn't do a lot more. But it's been so cold that nobody has wanted to come out here. Carolyn just started coming out here maybe again this week to cook again. She was doing it on the back porch. She would wait until we lit the wood stove, and then she would go cook on the back porch and then come back in. The tiny house is so small that when you open the door, it instantly cools the place off. So when it's so cold down in those single digits and negative temperatures, it really is good to wait to have that wood stove lit before you go outside. Now the wood stove sits right next to the door, so it's kind of like a shield that keeps that cold air from coming in. But it'll drop at 5 degrees in there just by opening the door and shutting it a couple times. I've told Carolyn a gazillion times that she could heat this place if she wanted to. We've got the buddy heater. She could have turned on the oven, but she doesn't want to waste her propane. And I know people just don't seem to understand that we just don't like to consume things that we don't have to consume. People will say that it's terrible that Carolyn's got to cook on the back porch, but I still take care of the chickens and I still got to get water. So we're both doing our chores. So I don't know why everybody thinks Carolyn is an invalid and she can't take care of herself. She's perfectly capable of taking care of herself. She can do whatever she wants. She could have brought this. Now, like I said, I primarily come down here just to can food. As you know, we can a lot of our food. Primarily chicken, but I've canned all kinds of things. Beef, pork, bacon. Turkey, we've canned turkey, and we do broth, just tons of broth. Now the broth is just, so what we do is we cook the chicken, bag chicken. You can get it at Save a Lot at Walmart, like $10 maybe for a bag of chicken, somewhere around there. Prices vary. We thaw that out and then we boil it, and that leftover liquid in the pan after you boil it is the broth. People have asked me, how do I filter out the crud in there? Well, I don't really filter out the crud. We're carnivores, so we don't can vegetables. Somebody's going to ask, how do you can tomatoes? Somebody's going to ask. I mean, yeah, you can do all that water bath, all that stuff. People are going to tell you that you can without a pressure canner. I just wouldn't do it. It's just, I just don't agree with it. It's just not safe. It's just, the tests have been done. If you don't have a pressure canner and do it towards the instructions, you can get botulism. Botulism is the most deadly thing on the planet. So I don't know why you want to risk it, but that's up to you. So we also use Tattler lids, and I've finally gotten the Tattler lids to work pretty much 100%. I think I may have had a failure or two in the last 3 or 4 sessions. Not a huge issue, and I don't think I had any failures with chicken itself. I think I canned some broth and that failed, but I don't think I had any other failures. The Tattler lids are really nice. They're reusable, whereas the canning lids, the metal ones, you're not supposed to reuse them. I know people do. We reuse them to vacuum seal, but we don't reuse them to can. And you're not supposed to. There's just too much risk, and I don't know why anybody would want to take the risk. When you take a metal lid off, there is the potential that you're going to bend it, just a microscopic bend. And so you bend it, then you try to recan it, and you don't know, and it's failed. I just don't know. Whereas there's no risk of tearing these up. You pop them off. The gasket, it's a 2-piece assembly. You got the white lid, and you got the gasket, and the gaskets are replaceable. And over time, I mean, they're very cheap in comparison to the metal lids. I think I got a 12-pack for $5. The thing is every time you reuse one of these lids, it drops the price of it. It just took me a long time to figure out how to get them to work. And I've got videos on that. I've showed how to do it. I think I got a playlist. I don't know if I put my recent videos in the playlist, but I have a playlist on canning. I would suggest that you go check them out if you're interested in canning. If your freezer fails, you lose all your meat. My grandma had a freezer fail one time. It was springtime. There was a storm came through, knocked out the electric for 2 weeks. She had no way to power her freezers. They just butchered the last fall I think 13 cows. And so all that meat spoiled. I think it was that year that she butchered 13 cows. Regardless, she butchered every year. I just don't know. I think that was the year that she butchered 13. And so she had all that meat and it all spoiled. But if you can your meat, it's not going to spoil. The FDA or USDA or whoever approves these things say you can only keep them in the jar for a year. And I encourage you to follow the FDA or the USDA's instructions. I personally don't. We've got chicken in there that we're still eating. It's perfectly fine. I think the biggest mistake people make is they don't listen, they don't pay attention to what's going on. When I was canning, I heard a squeal like an air leak from a tire, just that little squeak, that little squeal. And when I was canning, I immediately identified that I must have had a piece of chicken on the lip of the can. And so when it tried to seal around that chicken, so it was squealing, trying to draw that air in from that vacuum. So you just got to pay attention. The other thing, when we were doing just metal lids, we didn't have Tadler. Occasionally, you'd have one fail. That's the thing about metal lids versus Tadler lids. With Tadler lids, they fail right away. That day, you take them out of the canner, either they don't seal up, or when you take the metal bands off, they're not sealed. But rarely do you have one that fails later on. Whereas with metal lids, you'll get one that fails later on. 3 or 4 months after you can it, it'll fail. Us being in a tiny house, we hear it. It pops, and well, we have one fail, so we just go and look for it, go through all our cans, and we check them regularly. I come down here probably once a week, and I check these caps to make sure that, because of the metal caps, they got that clicky thing. I make sure they click. I make sure they don't click. With the Tadler lids, all you got to do is hold it by the lid, if I can get a good grip on it. And if it holds itself up, then it's sealed. The problem I have with, I guess, social media in general is myths spread, myths. One of the things that I see on YouTube all the time is somebody will take a rubber tire and they'll put their log in the rubber tire and they're splitting it, and that rubber tire is supposed to hold everything together. But when you actually do it in practice, there's a million things that can go wrong. None of your logs are the same size. So how do you get one log to fit in the tire and the next log doesn't fit in the tire? You have to understand that people are making YouTube videos so you'll watch a YouTube video. They're not overly concerned about the truth. So they'll find a log that perfectly fits inside of a tire. They'll split the wood. That way the logs don't fly all over the place, and you can just walk around the tire and just keep splitting it. Never have to touch the log until it's completely done. But how many tires do you have to have? You got to have a tractor, lawnmower tire, and you got to have a semi tire. It's a myth. It's not feasible. Well, when you come to canning, there are a lot of myths out there. And I say myths. There are some people I watch on YouTube that I trust a lot, and I think this person really knows what they're talking about, and then they'll say you can water bath meat. Yeah, you can until you die. I don't understand why people don't follow instructions. I mean, I get it. The guys in the world will say, I never read the instructions, I'll figure it out myself, and then 4 or 5 times happen to go replace it because they broke it. The ones I love is you'll see all these reviews on Amazon. And there's that one guy, it didn't work when I used it. And they explain what happened, and it's because they didn't follow the instructions. So when it comes to canning, when you go buy your pressure canner, it comes with a book of instructions. Now, I'm sure most people just throw that book of instructions away and they get on Google and they say, how do you can chicken? And you find 50,000 ways of canning chicken. Oh, you can water bath it. I mean, I saw one person say they water bath it on top of the wood stove. I don't know about that. That just seems really dangerous to me because you got varying temperatures of the wood stove. I think that's just really a bad idea. When you read the instructions of the pressure canner, you got to keep the temperature very consistent, so it's just barely jiggling the jiggler. There's a certain amount of time, a certain amount of pressure that you have to follow. And so when they do these experiments to determine how to write the instructions, they put it inside the pressure canner and they put a probe inside the can, and they're checking and probe and make sure it's cooked, and at what temperature does botulism die. So they've done all these tests, and then some lady on YouTube says, oh no, don't follow those instructions. That's ridiculous. I've been doing this for years and I've only killed 3 people. So ignore that. You know, how many times have these people been sick? How many times have they gotten food poisoning? They don't explain any of this. They don't have the test to say, okay, this has got botulism, this has got salmonella, this has got E. coli. They don't have any of those tests. They just eat it and hope for the best. The thing is they started testing how to can food. As a result, well, I mean, there's a long history to it. The army and all this stuff, but people were dying from botulism. It was a real problem back in the day, whenever that was, you know, the 20s or 30s or whatever it was. And they had to figure out how to get it stopped. And the primary cause of botulism was canned food. They had to figure out how to stop the botulism. And you hear people saying, well, they'll put their meat in the jar, they put the lard, hot lard in there, that cooks it and seals it up. I don't know. I mean, that was fine for back in the Depression era, I guess. One of my concerns that I had about being in this camper is it's a good storage space. It frees up the tiny house a lot. But I was worried that the expansion during freezing would expand the liquid inside these jars and pop the lid off. Now, I had some things running in my head. These things are under a vacuum. Since it's under a vacuum, as you freeze, it expands, but the vacuum would get tighter. I mean, I just had a lot of things going through my head, and I just wasn't sure what would happen. Now, I know that if you buy a can of tuna, that if it freezes, it's still fine. So I wasn't sure what would happen with these. So what I did over the summer before winter happened was I took one of these jars with a Tadler lid, because Tadler lids, in my opinion, are more sensitive to the lid popping off. Things can happen to it. I mean, heck, just bumping them around a little bit, they can, even taking the ring off can cause it to pop loose. So I took one with a Tadler lid and I put it in the freezer, let it freeze overnight. Took it out, let it thaw. Put it back in, let it freeze. Took it out. Probably about 20, 24 times, 25 times, somewhere around there. And what ended up happening was Carolyn bumped it as she was getting in the freezer and knocked the lid off. That's what knocked the lid off. So we decided we were going to leave some of our canned food out here. Now I came out every day and I checked them, checked every jar, and everything remained sealed. Through that hard freeze when we got down to negative temperatures, the liquid inside was frozen. But as you can see, everything is perfectly fine. The thing is, as we were in the middle of this freeze, one of these myths came up. Everybody will tell you, don't believe anything you hear on social media or read, yet everybody believes everything they hear or read on social media. I'm not expecting you to believe me, but what I would hope that you would have done was saw that I took it out of the freezer, put it in the freezer, took it out of the freezer. I tried to show that, or at least tell you about it in my YouTube videos. I had no reason to lie to you. It would have failed, and then we'd have just left them in the tiny house, and I would have said, well, that didn't work. During this hard freeze, I get a comment from somebody that tells me, I've got some news for you, Rob. I just found something out, something you can learn, that if your neck of your jar comes in and it freezes, your jar will break. You have to have jars that don't have a neck, even though they have somewhat of a neck. What he really wanted to say was wide mouth won't break. Small mouth, the regular jars, will break. And what he was trying to explain was the expansion of the frozen food would cause it to break right here at the neck. Well, I knew that was wrong because I've been coming out here every day and checking it, and I checked it in the freezer. So I knew it wasn't completely accurate. If some did break or one broke, then I could say, okay, I guess it makes sense. So I replied back, some to the effect, so you want me to believe that something I am learning here on the comment section is true. I shouldn't believe my lying eyes that nothing is breaking. And I said, I even went through all these tests. Well, he deleted the comment after I said that. Well, I was scrolling through Facebook, or Carolyn was scrolling through Facebook in one of the off-grid groups, and there was a meme. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but a post. And it said, the same thing that this guy said. It was spreading like wildfire on Facebook. And everybody's like, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, that's good to know. Huh? And they were sharing it with people, and there were thousands of comments underneath it. But there was no sourced information. There was no pictures of things breaking. You know, if there would have been a picture of a big clump of ice of chicken and a broken jar, I would have said, that might have something. But there was nothing. How do I know that the person who posted this didn't accidentally break a jar? Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it can happen. But the way they were reacting was like every jar you're going to own is going to break. Study a little bit. Don't just believe the myths of Facebook and social media. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was talking about being robbed. So if I can inspire you to do your own testing so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.